Sir, we are live.
All right. Appreciate each one coming. Good to see some people here for one of our meetings, so. We'll call it this meeting to order. Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Malone,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Adams, I am present, Mr. Hunt.
All right. Before we move any further, I know this is, not on the agenda. I'd like to stop for a moment, just have a moment of silence for our neighbors, our friends, if we can, just for a few moments. All right, the next agenda item is discussion and action. The meeting minutes from September the 10th of 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Have any changes or discussion on those?
Yeah, I make a motion to accept them.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
I vote yes. 3 voting yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The next agenda item is public comments. If we have anyone here that would like to speak, please stand and would be recognized, and need the name and address of the speaker, please.
Good afternoon, James Roberts, 231 Lakeview Drive, Bluff City, Tennessee, 37618.
Thank you, sir.
I spoke at the last meeting, Mr. Chairman. I have come tonight to come at this a little bit different direction for you, bring you some information that I'd inferred at the last meeting, but didn't have something to tangibly place in your hand. So I'd like to do that at this time. I think that this board meeting was called an error tonight based upon the fact that we're seeking, or they're seeking, to amend the entrance to a community that this board has never approved, sir. In 2021, it was brought before the board a rezoning request for R1 to R2, and it was actually, a variance was requested at the same time. City Attorney Fry actually corrected, at the time, Alderman Malone, who claimed that the hearing that evening was to pass the ordinance in addition to the variance, and corrected him that that was not the case. That hearing was entirely to hear the rezoning. To follow up on that and ensure that I wasn't mistaken, I filed a formal Freedom of Information Act request with Town Manager and Mayor Jeff Brules.
Right.
He effected service through the Bluff City Police Department.
Okay.
This is the summation of everything per that request. That request was detailed and itemized specifically any and all documentation pertaining to Jockey Properties, Baker Construction Group, and Morel Meadows, or property located at 229 Lakeview Drive, Bluff City, Tennessee. Mr. Rules affirmed that he completed the FOIA request at the following meeting, with one exception, and that was the minutes from that last meeting, because he had not typed them out at that time. He did later furnish a copy.
He speaks the truth, Mr. Chairman.
So with that, you'll go through the FOIA request. You'll find that in no minutes of the board, in no notations anywhere, has this site plan ever been approved by Bluff City. Additionally, to approve such site plan requires certain things, one of which being from TDEC, a series of inspections, one of which is the stormwater runoff for construction runoff. The other would be the DWR Engineering Service Unit inspection upon our sewers. Now, even in the minutes back at those meetings, Alderman Broyles asserted to the board, and actually it's not notated in the meetings because the meeting minutes that you just approved for the last meeting were not as thorough as they usually are. He affirmed to the board that he had personal knowledge that it was everything was approved by TDEC and everything was good to move forward. I present to the board an email from Sandra Vance, TDEC's representative in Johnson City, and I'll read it for the record. Construction stormwater general permit coverage, TNR 162105, does not include an evaluation for the proposal of sanitary sewer system connection, 18 taps, parentheses. Engineering plans have been submitted to DWR Engineering Service Unit for review and approval. As of September 23rd, 2024, DWR has not received any engineering plans for this project, Jockey Properties or Morel Meadows subdivision, sir.
Thank you.
And of note, the variance was never approved either. Actually, there were multiple variances that were requested at that meeting, of the board, but none of those variances have ever been brought before, Board of Mayor Alderman.
That's the board of mayor and alderman.
Yeah, that's where, yeah, that's it.
Of note, the FOIA request was not specific to the Board of Mayor Alderman. It was made specific to the planning board.
Yeah. That was the hearing that you were speaking of in here, right?
Which one? There have been multiple hearings.
Okay.
There was an original planning board meeting in which I was attendance, where the planning board unanimously recommended the rezoning.
Okay.
Then there was a follow-on on, I believe it was June 1st and then July 6th for the first and second readings of the variance. And the variance carried, I believe, at the time Alderman Keith was the only one that protested because she wanted more information based on what I was trying to explain to her. But if you'll read the minutes, Attorney Fry assured her that it was not approving the community, that was reliant upon this board at a later date. I did my due diligence, sir. I reached out to the authority, the competent authority over the matter, and requested a copy of all records. I present you the records I was presented. Therefore, logic only dictates that there was never an approval of this community. So I don't know how the board can approve a change on something that hasn't actually been approved yet.
So we have a plat, an original plat for that subdivision.
I have one with me if you need it.
Yeah. If you're addressing me, Mr. Chairman, I provided what documents were provided to me.
Okay.
Just for clarification, the Board of Mayor and Alderman would have voted on any rezoning request, but the Board of Zoning Appeals would have voted on any variance.
Here. We would have voted on the variance, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, the Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction over variances. And the board has jurisdiction, well, both boards have jurisdiction over rezoning requests.
So at this time, you're saying that this community, proposed community does not exist?
I'm saying at this time, sir, that this board has never approved this community.
Okay, all right.
And seeing as it wasn't on the agenda for this evening, I don't believe that it would be proper for the board to attempt to spontaneously hear this request and try to approve it all at the same night.
So until I see proof that this is being done in this board,
Man,
citizen?
Mhm.
Sure.
Eric
State your-
Johnson,
okay, go ahead.
229 Lakeview Drive.
Okay,
This meeting has nothing to do with the development of Morel Meadows, other than the lot being sold from Jockey Properties to Eric Johnson in the shape of the future Lot 10. The purpose of this meeting is to get approval from the Blood City Planning Commission to either approve a plat named Johnson Estate, which is with lots sold in egress, ingress, easement from the lot to Lakeview Drive depicted in preliminary plat 2, which is the portion of the descriptive easement that is already in place for the Roberts. This is the preferred option of the buyer and seller. The other option is to sell the lot depicted on preliminary plat 1, which is a flag lot sold in fee from Jockey Properties to Eric Johnson. This meets minimum standards for a simple subdivision in Sullivan County. There will be an agreement between the two parties that the easement or flag portion of the lot will dissolve if or when there is a completion to Morel Meadows. So this traction does not compromise any approval or disapproval for Morel Meadows in the past by Bluff City. Both of these options meet the minimum standards for a simple subdivision in Sullivan County. That's all I have.
okay, I can see that being a request.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, at the last meeting, I spoke with, the surveyors for Baker Construction Group, and I did indicate with them that, as a neighbor, would have had no issue if they were to come back to the board with a proposal for subdivision that segregated the 1 acre property for Mr. Johnson and left the remaining property as a whole. However, it was asserted, and I believe we have not been furnished a copy, I could be in error, but I believe if you look, it's probably still reflecting as a complete full subdivision. So in order for the board to approve what they're requesting, they would be, in essence, approving the subdivision, which they can't do at this time. It was presented to them a month ago to amend and alter before they came back to the board, so that we could proceed and try to help Mr. Johnson obtain property that he's been rightfully occupying for 3 years now.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
So, what draws my attention is the 2 drawings marked preliminary 1 and preliminary 2.
Yes, sir.
And with that, it seems to me, in the way I'm reading these drawings, that the only concern is the Johnson property and the access thereof.
That's correct.
I do not see any marks. It says in the bigger portion, under preliminary 2, under Jockey Properties, I don't see anything about a subdivision. I see, Mr. and Ms. Johnson's property near it. I see the Roberts property near it, and the 2 lots. And then I see another property bordering it, owned by William Chadwick and Paige Baker. So, what draws my eye is just the preliminary 1 and preliminary 2 drawings, and a simple request from an individual homeowner. That's what I see. And not anything concerning subdivision.
Now, this request is not according to the information I have in front of me, so.
I have copies of the plats that he's looking at, if you would like to see them.
You have what now?
I have copies of the plat that he's referring to, if you would like to see them.
Will that be this preliminary 1 and preliminary 2?
Yes, sir.
That's what I have also.
both preliminary one and preliminary two should only show jockey properties and the proposed
Non-subdivided.
non-subdivided
Right.
lot of Mr. Johnson's.
If I may.
Any other questions or comments?
Carolyn
Comments?
Payne, 4818 Biloxi Highway. In Mr. Johnson's statement, at the very end of it, what I really called, because this is my first meeting of attending this type meeting, it was mentioned of Morel Meadows. And if what you're talking about, we are talking about Morel Meadows. And does the property, is Mr. Johnson the owner of the property that he is referring to, which is his property? Is he indeed the owner of that property? Or is that property owned by someone else? I mean, does he own the home that he's living in?
I didn't know that. I just have a plat laying in front of me.
Well, I mean, well, that's what I heard, you know, talking about his property. And in order to have property, you must own the property, right? So, I mean, that's just a question, I'm sorry. But wouldn't it have to be answered? What if, does it belong to someone else?
We have a plat with a request,
Okay,
and the request has nothing to do with a subdivision.
right.
So
That's
that's
what
out of
I got.
question.
That's what I got
That's
out
out
of
of
all
question.
this, and that it was just, at the end, it was mention of Morel Meadows, which is what you all are talking about tonight, Morel Meadows. It's never really come to the table to you all, really. If I understand tonight
No,
correctly.
that's not what we're here for.
Oh, okay.
Anyone else have a comment?
That's why it says development. Lakeview Drive instead of-
Michelle Roberts, 231 Lakeview Drive. A question, so, looking at both the previous agenda and the one currently for, this evening, the discussion is labeled as request for modification of entrance Lakeview Drive development. That alludes to it as development, and, Eric here did mention the fact of, we have not seen the plans that are in front of you, unfortunately, because they're not provided along with the agenda. However, it sounds as though the current, what he said is an easement, which is actually a deeded right-of-way, remains current to the one that already exists. So if that's the case, there's actually no modification of the entrance itself, other than a change on his deed of the person who has it. So, just want to reiterate for the fact that request for modification of entrance Lakeview Drive development. It alludes to the fact of Morel Meadows and not simply a segregation of one plot from the rest of the land. So,
The last time we had a meeting on this, I requested a written statement of what we were doing. There was so much confusion. So I asked them to send us a written request. So we have two options in front of us.
can the public see the options?
The option, this plat belongs to these people. Okay, so until that has been approved, it's not public record.
Then once it's approved, the public has no opportunity to comment. So it's kind of a catch-22 for the public.
That doesn't sound right.
So,
It may be perfectly fine as it is, and the public may agree with it, but we can't even view it and give that input. And it makes the comment section null at this point.
the comment section is, in this situation, is a little, it gives you an opportunity beforehand to give comments, right? But
But not
once we get to the business is done, so.
Is there a reason why there's
Mr.
not two comment sections for before and after?
Mr. Chairman, I would distribute this request.
If
I
you
believe
need,
that'd clear up a lot of confusion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you would excuse me, I can move over and make multiple copies.
If you
Are you
would,
speaking
please.
of this, Mr.
Yes.
Pratt?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Very good. I'll be right
so
back.
we're on
Mayor, you may wanna use the police department, the, ladies in office ran out of ink.
No,
Yes, sir.
I just used it a while ago. Thank you, though.
so So we'll stand by just for
I
a minute.
appreciate
Just
that.
keep in
That's
mind that
actually not true.
this meeting is still, it's still meetings, and we're not adjourned.
While he's making copies, may I ask a question that I didn't understand? When you were talking about moved into the business part, when did the citizens' comment stop and the business part pick up?
The citizens have an opportunity to comment on anything on this, right? And we used to didn't have that.
Right. I'm aware.
So now we have a citizens comment, which I think is fair.
Yes.
I think every agenda item really needs to have an opportunity. I think it's fair for the citizens that everybody could. I wouldn't want to be sitting in your seat and not be able to comment. Now, it doesn't mean we gotta answer questions. Okay, that it does not mean. But, for the sake of the community, it's fair. You know, that everybody has an opportunity to comment. So then, once that happens, when we get down on the next agenda item, then the board takes action.
But are we on the next agenda? Are we on the business part? We're still commenting, right?
Yeah,
Mr.
we're
Chairman, I
still
present 10 copies, you know, mayors can change it, Senator Cartridge too.
So you all had this, right? You got this. Got 10 copies.
We can share one, there's plenty of people in here.
I want a copy. Thank you.
I got all thumbs, and I don't wanna work. Sorry about that.
That's when I start licking my fingers, separating them.
Anybody got any? Got any? Don't leave anybody out here. So now that I've distributed this, does anyone else have any comments? I'll give you just a second to read it before we move on.
I've got one. I didn't announce who I was last time. I'm Chris Covell, one of the land surveyors with Baker Construction Services. The intent here this evening, as Mr. Johnson had stated, is to secure access to that property that we are trying to create for him. When we create that particular piece of property, it will sever it from the parent tract. And the parent tract is the one that has the access back to that house, where Mr. Johnson is residing. So what we're trying to do is when we sever that lot from that parent tract, make sure that he's not landlocked and that he continues to have access to his current residence. That's all we're here to do.
Does anyone else have any comments? We'll move on.
I've already had my moment, but in light of receiving information from you, may I ask a follow-up question?
Well, you can ask it, but we don't necessarily have to answer it, but you can make a comment. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, then I'll make a comment here. So if I understand this correctly, and I will share the floor and say that if you want to answer this, would welcome that. I wanna make sure I understand correctly. Option one is Johnson Estate, where the property has an ingress egress easement from the Lakeview Drive to preliminary plat 2. This ingress easement is the same as what's there. It's the driveway, it's the easement, it just uses the same right-of-way that we already have in place.
For, we're talking preliminary two, correct?
For plat 2.
Yeah.
And then plat 1, which, no, I know, Chairman, you said that, or, excuse me, Mr. Boyle said that, he didn't see any reference to Morel Meadows, he just saw the blank. Plat 1, for the record, does mention future development of Morel Meadows. With that, that would be classifying that property as a whole as a subdivision, and it would still temporarily retain the same easement. He would have an easement that aligns with our right-of-way to be dissolved upon further development of that
If and when,
subdivision, correct?
if and when,
Okay,
if and when.
thank you for clarifying.
Any other comments? All right. Now I've got so many papers laying in front of me, I don't know which agenda I'm looking at. Let's see here, back to what I was going to. This is it right here, I'm gonna hand it off over here. All right, here we go. All right, one more chance for public comments.
Just briefly, I mean, we all know that we're talking about Morrell Meadows here. And the layout of the sewer line and the water lines, I'll voice my opinion right now. They are of grave concern because they are going to be backed into Lakeview Drive out there. And we know everything, all the waste runs right down Bluff City Highway, turns, makes the right down there on Lakeview Drive. It's gonna tap in right there. It's gonna run right on down there to where they treat, Driscoll Bluff treats our distribution down there. And my grave concern here is, how many gallons of sewer goes through that pipe a day? What is the size of the current pipe down there? Is this going to be a total worthless effort? Is it gonna blow up Bluff City sewer lines when these 18 houses get tapped on down there? I have concerns that go down the road past Morrell Meadows. And it is kind of, it's not a right thing that we're sitting in this meeting right now. And we all know we're talking about a subdivision. Now, that's my statement. I might be wrong, but that's my statement, that's my comment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Ms. Payne, unless I didn't hear it, did you ever state your name and address for the record?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I heard it.
Any other comments?
I have a question. Bethany Thompson, 191 Lakeview Drive. I know it may not be answered, or if it can be answered, it may not be tonight because you may not know. When was the water line last replaced on Lakeview Drive? How old is that water line?
I couldn't answer that.
How can I find out?
We have to go back through the records here to find that out. I mean, if it's one of our city lines, we'd have to go back through the records.
Okay.
I think we need to know the size of them and age of them.
If the water line's back,
Yeah.
that's
All right,
why I asked.
do we have any other comments?
And so,
All right, we're gonna move forward. Discussion and action is the next, agenda item. Discussion and action request for resignation by Brian Hunt.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hunt, we thank him for his service. Obviously, did state at a public meeting hosted on September 30th in the public comments that he wished to resign from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I then spoke with Mr. Hunt on October 1st at the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting and asked him directly if he desired to resign, and he said he did. I do not have a written record of that resignation, but he has been in public comments, and they are recorded, and I did ask him directly, and he said he desired to resign.
All right, so we need to have a motion to accept his resignation.
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I second that motion.
And a vote, please.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Chairman, 3 votes yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next agenda item, discussion and action, request for modification of entrance, Lakeview Drive Development. We have, gentleman here. Chris, okay. So you have any other comments? Would you like to, I'd like for you to read your request, please.
request was the same,
This presentation.
same as what Mr. Johnson,
Okay, all right, so you being the individual that's living on the property current, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you're the surveyor,
yes, sir.
all right. So, according to this request, we have two options pretty much that you've laid before,
Yes, sir.
right? The first option is a plat, named Johnson Estate. This property has an egress easement, from the lot to Lakeview Drive, correct?
Correct.
Existing. All right, depicted on preliminary plat 2. This egress easement is a portion of the descriptive easement that is already in place for the Roberts property. This is the preferred option by the buyer and seller. Agreed? All right. So, the first option is preliminary 2. Right?
Yes, sir.
So, does anybody have any questions on this from the board? On this plat?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No, sir.
Got any comments, questions? All right, the other option that was presented is to sell the lot depicted on preliminary plat 1, which is a flag lot, sold in fee from Jockey Properties to Eric Johnson. This meets minimum standard for a simple subdivision in Sullivan County. There will be an agreement between the two parties that the easement or flagged portion of the lot will dissolve if or when there is completion of Morrell Meadows. This transaction does not compromise any approval of Morrell Meadows in the past by Bluff City. So, and that plat was preliminary 1. Does the board have any questions, comments, or concerns about this preliminary plat 1?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Good. All right. So in the request to this board, we have the two options. So I'm assuming that you're requesting one of these two options tonight be approved, is that correct?
That's correct.
And plat 2, which was the first option, that you all have named Johnson Estate, is your preferred,
That is correct.
correct?
Yep.
All right. So the only questions that I have, where is the utilities to this property? I know that the overhead utility is marked on here, that runs just outside the property, right away at points, that's minimal. So where's the water run to this property from?
The water runs from the second,
Can you draw a pointer, please?
so the Roberts meter is there. The meter for air runs here because it originally went to this cattle.
Mhm.
Yep, and then it runs up and crosses and goes into the house on the backside.
Okay, so you're running across this property here now.
Yes. Yeah, but the meter's down here.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So where, do you have sewer?
Yes.
Where does it go?
Don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure it comes out here and connects to a manhole down here.
Crosses the same property.
Yes.
I mean, if they have a utility issue, if this was ever developed, we got water and sewer running across adjacent property.
Mhm.
All right, so if they ever did decide to develop this, then it's gonna have to be added to the sewer and the water coming into that subdivision somehow or another. You got any concerns with that?
That'd be between the property owners.
Yes.
All right,
The town's only responsible for providing the taps,
right.
and the taps and the customers in good standing on both.
I guess my concern would be, or question would be, if we leave those lines active underneath the roadway that the city then takes control of, then we have an issue.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, if we make a motion to approve this plat, I would recommend that the board make a decision, that this, if we do approve one of these plats, that the sewer would be connected to the, subdivision sewer if it ever gets to that point, and the water be tied in also, and those other lines be abandoned. And that this, property here that Mr. Eric lives on, that tap would just be moved up there. Cause I don't feel comfortable having a piece of property that's developed with somebody's individual lines running under it. Especially as, you know, the city taking on that responsibility of the street. But if there is approval made, I'd like for that to be in that motion.
Mr. Moore,
Yes, sir.
may I make a comment?
Sure.
If and when that the subject piece of property gets developed, when it is developed, new water and sewer will be put in place, and that existing line will not be there.
Right.
So if and when that does happen, what you are discussing now is already been thought about and discussed.
Okay.
And in works, if this were to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if this goes in, there'd have to be a tap put in there for that water and that sewer.
That would all come out and be changed.
Okay. So it is my understanding that preliminary plat 2 is your preference.
Yeah, everything stays the same. The road in, the road out, water, sewer, nothing changes, other than that approximate acre is deeded off.
All right, do I have a motion to approve plat, or preliminary plat 2? Our first option.
Before I provide my motion, I'd just like to ask council if there's anything he'd like to add.
No, I don't have anything.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve preliminary 2.
Don't do it yet. We have a second? We have a second? The motion did not carry for a lack of second. No vote required. All right, the next, agenda item. Stormwater questions or concerns, briefing concern, the annual MS4 report.
Mr. Chairman, before we take comments from the public, I draw your attention, if I have not given you this document, this is only for information only. And it just proves that the town did, in a timely manner, complete its annual MPDES MS4 annual report submission that I signed at 8:20 a.m. on September 30th. 24. You will find behind that the letter from to me dated September 25th that precedes this, and basically this says that we are in good standing. That's all I have, sir. Over to the public comments.
Was there any other questions, concerns from the board?
No, sir.
Report. You got anything? All righty, this meeting's adjourned.